Hello everyone and welcome back to James Talk Sports. 113th Milano-San Remo didn't disappoint. I think I've got my breath back and I think my heart rate's dropped. So here's my conclusions from the 113th San Remo and the first monument of the year. Before we get on with my conclusions from Milan-San Remo, if you liked the video, please hit that like button. If you disagree or want to make your own conclusions as well, please drop them in the comments down below. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. That would be great, and it will be a great way to help the channel grow. And where else can I start than Mate Mohoric winning the race. His race was very simple: get to the top of the Poggio either with that front group or just behind, and use his fantastic descending skills to get back on, get to the front, attack, and then power and win the race. And it worked a treat. He is the first winner as well of a bike race on the road with a drop of seat post, and he also tried to run himself off the road at least twice. The race will always be remembered for that descent, the bunny hopping out of the verge, pretty much hitting the wall further down the descent, and then even on the flat inside the final kilometre when his chain came off as well. Congratulations, Mate Mohoric, on a daring, if slightly bonkers, win. Although the race will be remembered for Mohoric's daring descent, I think the other conclusion is that the group behind, or in any race, but especially today, when there's a solo rider up the road, they always seem to struggle to work together. You had Mathieu van der Poel, who we'll get on to later, Wout van Aert, Tadej Pogacar, Michael Matthews, Anthony Turgis, Søren Kragh Andersen, and Mads Pedersen. And there was only two, maybe three, working to try and chase him. And they were Van der Poel, who hasn't raced yet this season, and Wout van Aert, who is one of the favourites in the sprint. So yes, Mohoric was incredible, but it was also helped by some interesting tactics from Pedersen, who is one of the fastest sprinters in that group, Michael Matthews, and the rest you can sort of say they weren't going to win in the sprint anyway, but it definitely helped. We'll get on to the Flying Dutchman now. Mathieu van der Poel was only announced to start this race yesterday afternoon, when Alpecin announced, after a few rumours on the Thursday evening. And they announced it with absolutely zero expectations, but you don't race a race like San Remo, especially as your first race coming back from injury, unless you think you can win it. You wouldn't put your body through 290k unless you think you can win. If his back was an issue, he'd have been much better off starting at Coppi Bartoli, for example. And I think on the Poggio, you could tell he certainly missed that racing in his legs. He reacted brilliantly to all the attacks, and when Søren Kragh and Pogacar were up the road towards the top, he had to close the gap instead of Wout van Aert, who couldn't. So although he was missing that top end, he's still incredible. To take a podium on your first race back from an injury like a back injury after 293 kilometres is insane, and surely it makes him, given how much he'll ride into the season, the favourite, or certainly one of, or up there with Flanders and Roubaix a couple of weeks away. We came into San Remo knowing that how UAE would ride. They'd be backing Tadej Pogacar and they would make the Cipressa and the Poggio incredibly difficult to stop the sprinters or drop them, and for the most part it did. On the Cipressa you dropped Elia Viviani, Jakobsen, and pretty much all the big sprinters apart from Arnaud Demar. And Jan Polance did a brilliant job. Davide Formulo did an equally brilliant job at the top of the Poggio, the Cipressa, run into the Poggio, and Ulisi positioned Pogacar brilliantly before his attack. Sadly for Pogacar, I think the Poggio is a little bit too easy for him to make a true difference on the likes of Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, and Matej Mohoric. What started out so positively for Wout van Aert as one of the top favourites for the race turned out to be a bit of a disappointment. Looked fantastic until probably the last 400-500 metres of the Poggio, when Soren Kragh dropped him, and then he couldn't go with Mohoric on the descent, and ultimately nobody would work cohesively to bring it back to make the sprint at the end. Jumbo-Visma rode a similarly brilliant race to UAE. Laporte and Primož Roglic were there in the final, not quite capable to help Wout van Aert, certainly on that descent after the descent of the Poggio. Roglic was in the group behind at 11 seconds. But a good day with a disappointing result, similar to UAE for Jumbo-Visma. My final conclusion from this year's Milano-San Remo is sprinter watch, and a few sprinters were up there very close to the front group. Arnaud Demar was a fantastic 10th place, showing signs of, one, he's climbing better than ever, but also that his sprint is coming back pretty well as well. Debutant Bimian Gamay was in 12th again. Some of them may well have been held up on the crash on the Poggio, so you may have missed that group, but great effort from him. Giacomo Nizzolo came in 21 seconds down, and all the rest of the sprinters came in well over a minute. Jakobsen was dropped on the Cipressa, like Viviani, so this year certainly wasn't a race for the sprinters, with Pogacar there and Wout van Aert looking to make it hard. Maybe next year with Caleb Ewan hopefully back, it may be a race for the sprinters. So there we have my conclusions for the 113th Milan-San Remo. Let me know yours down below or on Twitter, and I look forward to seeing you next time on James Talks Sport.